Mr. President, we are awaiting the conference report on the stimulus package, and the papers and the airwaves are full of the fact that this will be the largest expenditure that we have made peacetime, perhaps in our history. I think it well, as we wait for the details of the package, for us to pause for a moment and take a longer look beyond the recession, beyond the financial circumstances we're facing at the moment, and look down the road at what we are facing as a nation as a whole. So I'm going to make a historic pattern today and then introduce at the end a bill that I feel is necessary for us to deal with our financial problems. Let us go back a moment in history, Mr. President, to the year 1966. Why do I pick 1966? Because that was the year that we significantly expanded the entitlement spending in the United States. That was the year we adopted Medicare as a federal program. As you see from the chart, at that time, the mandatory spending constituted 26% of the budget. By mandatory, I mean spending that we have to do. People are entitled to receive that money whether we have the money or not. It's mandatory under the law. And the largest portion of the mandatory spending in 1966 was Social Security. We were paying roughly 7% of our budget for interest. We had non-defense discretionary spending, which was 23%, and the big item, the big ticket item that dominated the budget in 1966 was defense. It constituted 44% of federal spending in 1966. Let's see what has happened since that time. Let's see where we are today. And in fiscal 2008, this is where we are. The mandatory spending has grown from 26% to 54%. Interest costs, roughly the same. They were 7%, now they're 8%. Non-discretionary spending has shrunk to 17%. Defense discretionary, even though we are in wartime, is 21%. It is clear that the mandatory spending is taking over control of the federal budget. And interest costs, of course, are mandatory. We owe those interest costs. So you add the two together, 54 and 8, and you get 62% of the federal budget beyond the control of the Congress. That is, when we pass the appropriations bills, when we make our decisions what to spend money for, we are spending money in the minority, whereas 62% majority is out of our control. And when you take away the defense spending and assume that has a semi-mandatory aspect to it and put defense spending in the mix, that means the Congress only has control of 17% of the budget. An amazing change in the roughly 40 years from 1966 until today. What does the future look like? I must make the point that every projection we make around here is wrong. Every projection is an educated guess, but the educated guess of what will happen 10 years from now is that mandatory spending will have grown to 61% and interest costs to 10%. That's 71. The Congressional Budget Office won't make a guess as to the divide between defense and non-defense discretionary spending. So all discretionary spending will be 29%. If we divide it in half, as it has historically been, that means the Congress, just 10 years from now, will only control 10% of the federal budget. All of the rest of it will be on automatic pilot. That is a startling thing to look forward to. So as we're talking about the stimulus package, we need to pause, as I said, and pay a little attention to the entitlement spending that will go on and the kind of spending that will be built up, and we're adding to that with this stimulus package. Now, here it is in the projections of what it will be, and it constitutes a wave. Indeed, it has been referred to almost as a tsunami of spending, and it's broken down into the three primary sources of mandatory spending, the three biggest entitlements. At the bottom is the one that is the biggest now, and that is Social Security. But Social Security does not grow as fast as the next one, which is Medicare, and then on top of that is Medicaid. And one can see that this tsunami of spending will take our mandatory spending, which at the moment is less than 10% of GDP, up to more than 20% of GDP. Let me put up another chart that illustrates the same point in a slightly different way. You have the same entitlements, and we have added in this chart discretionary spending, and the solid line across here is the average revenue of the federal government. It's recorded in percentage of GDP, and we have historically had a revenue average of 18.4% of GDP. And as you can see, in 2007, the expenditures were slightly above that line, and the largest portion of the expenditures were the combination of defense and non-defense discretionary spending. But the projection, as you go out, you see that at some point, the entitlements will take over every dime that we take in, and the largest portion of it will be Medicare. Social Security will still be there, Medicaid will still be there, and discretionary spending will shrink even further as a percentage of what we're dealing with. Why is this happening? Is this some kind of a plot that somebody is involved in? No. This is a result of the demographic changes that are occurring in our country, and this chart summarizes it with the headline, Americans are getting older. If you go back to 1950, the percentage of Americans who were age 65 or older was about 7%, taking it here at the beginning. It grew, the percentage, at a relatively slow level, and then actually began to shrink. Why did it begin to shrink of the percentage of Americans 65 and over? This is the reflection of the Great Depression. People had fewer children in the Great Depression, so it follows that 65 years later, there were fewer people who were of retirement age. But following the Great Depression, you had the Second World War, and then when people came home from war, you had what historians refer to as the baby boom, and all of those who came as a consequence of that are called the boomers. And starting in 2008, which is now history, the line started upward in a dramatic fashion. And in the next 20 years, we are going to see something happen that has never happened in American history before. In the next 20 years, the percentage of Americans who are over 65 is going to double. That's what's driving all of the numbers that I put up before, all of the changes in entitlement spending. And these people are already born. This is not a projection that depends on guesses. This is something that we can be sure of because the demographics of these folks are already there. Now, the projection is that 20 years from now, when the baby boomers have finished retiring, the rate of increase will slow down again and go back to the somewhat gentle rate that it was before we got into this situation. But that is the reality that we are dealing with. In the next 20 years, the percentage of Americans who are 65 or over is going to double. All right? Let's look at some of the detail behind these demographics. Seniors are living longer. Not only are we going to get more of them, but they're living longer, and that's why that trend is not going to turn down once the baby boomers have been absorbed. We go back to 1940. After you reach 65 in 1940, if you were male, your life expectancy was another 12 years, female, 13. And so on. The chart shows how it has changed. Now, if you're male and you reach 65, your life expectancy is another 16 years. And if you're female, it's another 19 years. And just roughly a short decade away, male will go to 18 and female to 21. That means that all of the entitlement programs that are geared towards our senior citizens are going to be tapped into for many more years than was the case when they were put in place. If we go back to the history of Social Security, we realize that Social Security was something of a lottery. That is, when Social Security started in the 1930s, roughly half of American workers did not survive until they were 65. So it was a lottery with 100% of the people paying in and only 50% taking anything out. Those who paid in got nothing for having done so, and those who survived to 65 got the benefit of their survivals. All right, now you see they are living longer. Today, something like 75 or 80% of the workers who join the workforce at age 20 are still alive at 65, so the lottery doesn't work anymore. Instead of half of the people paying into the lottery not getting anything out, you've got more than 3/4 of the people who pay into the lottery getting something out, and then once they get it for longer. The life expectancy of Americans is going up. As was shown in the last chart, this shows the trend lines for male and female. Again, in 1940, the life expectancy of Americans who had reached 65 for males, was about 75. When we get out into the future, it'll be 86. Put those two facts together. More people survive to 65, and then more people who get into the pool over 65 stay there for more years. All of this means that the financial structure of Social Security is simply unsustainable. Social Security cannot deal with these demographic changes. This is not a Republican plot or a Democratic plot. These are the demographics of the reality of the fact that Americans are healthier, living longer, and surviving to longer age. So you get this reaction to the Social Security situation. We go to the next chart that shows how Social Security really works in terms of the lottery that I was talking about. In 1945, the program was still in its infancy, so this is a bit of a distortion. There were 42 people working and paying into the program for every one retiree drawing out. As the program matured and more of the workers retired, this number very appropriately came down. But by 1950, there were still 17 workers paying into the program for every one retiree drawing out. Today, there are 3 workers paying into the program for every one drawing out. And with the demographic realities that I described in the previous charts, we are looking at a time where there will be 2 workers for every retiree. That means if the retiree is going to take out $1,000 a month, each worker has to be putting in $500 a month in order to make that happen. And for a long period of time. This is how we have dealt with this demographic change throughout our history. We have dealt with it by raising taxes. Every step along the way, as the number of workers to retirees has gone down, the amount of taxes that every worker pays has gone up. Here's the history of the payroll tax increases. 1937, you paid taxes on $3,000, and that was it. Now it's $106,000. It has gone up and up all the way through. This is unsustainable. You cannot continue to deal with the demographic changes in Social Security by simply ratcheting up the taxes. You have to do something to stabilize Social Security in a way that it will be there for our children and our grandchildren. There is a reported survey, I've seen it many, many places, but I've never seen the source, that says that a poll shows that among the young people in America, more believe in the existence of UFOs than believe that Social Security will be available for them when they retire. I have grandmothers come up to me spontaneously on the streets in Utah and tell me how concerned they are that their children and grandchildren will not have Social Security. I have people entering the workforce who come to me and say, Senator, my biggest question is, will Social Security be there for me? And increasingly, people are sure that it is not. The legislation that I introduced today, Madam President, is geared to make sure that Social Security will be there for our children and our grandchildren, and that it will be there at roughly the same level it is for us. That is, they will not have to accept significantly less than we accept in order to make this program work. How do we do that in the face of this demographic challenge? How is that possible? Well, one of our colleagues here in the Senate for many years, Senator Pat Moynihan of New York, had the answer. Senator Moynihan looked back on how Social Security benefits were calculated, and he said, you know, we calculate the increase in Social Security benefits on the wrong base. I don't want to get too technical here, but the term that applies is wage-based increases for cost of living. And Senator Moynihan pointed out the cost of living is not going up as rapidly as wages are. So if we would just adjust the base from wage base to cost of living base, a true cost of living base, that means that we would slow down the rate of growth in benefits, and in slowing down the rate of growth in benefits in that fashion, we would solve the problem. It would become solvent. That's fine, but what if you are someone who depends upon Social Security as your sole source of retirement? It was never intended that that would be the case when it was put in place, but it has become that way for too many Americans. If they were to give up the benefit that comes from an overpayment, that is the form of wage-based adjustments, to go to the true payment of cost of increasing, which is the cost of the consumer price index, it would hurt them. They would give up significant benefits. On the other hand, if you look at people like Warren Buffett and Oprah Winfrey, they don't really need to have Social Security go beyond the true increase in cost of living. So the solution is to say, for those who are at the bottom of the economic ladder, we keep Social Security benefits exactly as they are. For Warren Buffett and Oprah Winfrey and those who are at the exact top end of the economic ladder, we take Senator Moynihan's idea and we put it in place and say, you will have to struggle by with a Social Security plan based on the actual increase in cost of living rather than an inflated increase in cost of living. What about those of us who are in between the people at the bottom and the people at the very top? For those of us who fall in between those two areas, we get a mix, a blend, if you will, of wage base or cost of living base. It's called progressive indexing. All of the details are available in hearings that have been held on this subject, which I chaired when I was chairman of the Joint Economic Committee, and in other publications that have addressed this question. What will this do to the actual benefits of the people in Social Security? We have asked the Social Security Administration to tell us. Now again, these are projections, and as projections, they are subject to some kind of challenge, but they are the best analysis that people can make. And we start out with people who are currently 55. That is only 10 years away from the 65 retirement date, although Social Security, by the time they get there, will be at 67. But what's going to happen to them under the bill that I am introducing? This, in the dark bar, is what a 2009 retiree will get, and the red bar is what a 2019 retiree will get. And these are in constant dollars. That is, an adjustment has been made for inflation. And you see that in every instance, the 2019 retiree will get more than the 2009 retiree. Now, this is for the low earner. These are the people who are at the bottom third of our economic structure, then the medium earner and the high earner. So you see, in every case, people are made whole and protected. This last chart is for the max earner, the maximum earner, which, quite frankly, probably doesn't exist. That would assume that somebody entered the workforce at age 20, earned $106,000 a year the first year, and continued to earn that level going on up through his entire career. The maximum he could possibly draw from Social Security, that would be that one. But 82% of Americans fall in these two categories. So, for someone age 55, under this bill, they come out just fine. They have nothing they should worry about. Well, what about somebody who's 45, a little bit younger? What happens to them? Again, these are the estimates made by the Social Security Administration. Once again, the low earners, they do better under the Bennett plan. The medium earners, they do better under the Bennett plan. The high earners, virtually the same under the Bennett plan. We can make the proposal, or pardon me, make the statement that we are going to hold everybody harmless. We will adjust Social Security in a way that makes it solvent, while at the same time preserving the same level of benefits that we have. Those of us who are currently drawing Social Security benefits, we can see that the same level of benefits would be available to those who come after us. We will reach out all the way to 2075 and see what the estimates are from the Social Security Administration. These are people who will be born in 2010. It's a little hard to make a projection as to how much money they will have when they aren't alive yet, but the projections are made. Once again, under the bill that I am introducing today, in 2075, the people at the bottom will do substantially better, comparing today's benefit of $800 to the potential benefit of nearly $1,300, because they are the ones that are held harmless in the way Social Security benefits are currently calculated. So they will get a significant position of significantly greater benefit than they do under current law. The medium earner, well, they also will do better. The high earner also will do better. Even the max earner will come out essentially the same. Now, I can't guarantee these numbers. You can't guarantee with any certainty what the numbers are going to be in 2075. But the fact that the Social Security Administration, looking over a past version of this bill that I have introduced, has said everyone can look forward with some certainty, these are my description of it, not their words, everyone can look forward with some certainty to seeing that his or her Social Security benefits will be roughly the same as the benefits that are being paid to retirees today, and the system will be solvent, not requiring any increase in taxes throughout the life of the system. We've had a lot of debates about Social Security, and we've had a lot of proposals about Social Security. To my knowledge, this is the only one that can say the two things I've just said. That is, that everybody's benefit, wherever they fall on the economic continuum, will be held at roughly the same level as today's benefit, in the case of the low earners, substantially better, and it can be done without raising any taxes. That's why we call this the Social Security Solvency Act. Let me go back to the charts I put up in the beginning to stress once again the importance of bringing entitlements under control. This is where we were in 1966, before entitlements started to get out of control. We in the Congress controlled 23% of the budget in non-defense discretionary spending and 44% of the budget in defense spending, so we controlled the majority. Today, we have shrunk to the point where we control only 17% of the federal budget, with 21% for defense spending, and the mandatory and interest costs have grown to a majority, a significant majority. And looking ahead just 10 years, if we don't do something about the entitlements, the mandatory spending will be 61%, 71% when you add interest costs, and if you divide defense and non-defense in its historic pattern, we will only have 15% of the entire federal budget under our control for non-defense discretionary spending. We're talking about the largest single expenditure in our peacetime history. As we adopt it, we should do so against the backdrop of what we're looking at in mandatory spending down the road, and realize that if we are going to be able to afford this stimulus package, we have to have the courage to tackle mandatory spending at the same time. I yield the floor.
The senator from Oregon is recognized.
Madam President, before he yields the floor, I simply want to say to Senator Bennett, my partner lo these many years in the bipartisan effort to fix health care, how much I appreciate his leadership on the Social Security issue. I think everybody understands what the demographics here are all about, and in fact, the demographics on Social Security are very similar to the demographics on health care. And yet Senator Bennett has been out there prosecuting the case of trying to bring the United States Senate together for a bipartisan approach on Social Security, just as we have sought to do on health care. And I just want to let the senator from Utah know how much I am looking forward to working with him on this issue. I think he knows that there are a number of us who believe that this is going to take a bipartisan effort like most of the big issues, if you're going to get an enduring reform, bring the country together, you have to take the pursuit that Senator Bennett has followed here, which is to do your homework, get the financial underpinnings in place. And I just want to commend my colleague for all his effort to zero the attention of the Senate in on this Social Security question. And I'm looking forward to working with him in partnership on this, as well as continuing our health care efforts.
Madam President.
Senator from Utah is recognized.
Madam President, I thank my friend and colleague from Oregon for his kind words. He was not here when I put up one chart, which has now been taken away, that showed the tsunami of entitlement spending consisting of a band of 3 programs. The largest portion of that tsunami band was made up of health care spending. I will confess to having taken the easy route. Social Security is the easiest one to fix because we can make the kinds of changes that I described here that go back to the effort on behalf started by Senator Moynihan. Here is the chart. You can see Social Security is the easy one and eventually the small one. Medicare and Medicaid are the ones that are going to overwhelm us, and they are the most difficult ones to fix. So, Madam President, I'm honored to have the senator from Oregon say what he has to say because he has been the leader in recognizing that this challenge, that is the challenge of dealing with the health care costs, is the tougher challenge. But like most tough challenges, it is also the one that will produce the biggest reward. It's where the biggest opportunity lies. And as I've said many times, but repeat here on the floor of the Senate, one of the things I have realized while working with the senator from Oregon is that the best way to get all of these costs under control and turn these lines downward is to get quality going in our health care program. And the bill that I've had the honor to co-sponsor along with the senator from Oregon is focused on getting proper quality into our health care system. If the senator from Oregon is successful with whatever help I can give him and those of others that have joined us, he will make a significant contribution to he will have made a significant contribution to our country, not only in terms of the benefits that come from having done health care right, but from the economic impact of having done health care right. And it will have made it possible for us to even consider such expenditures as TARP and the stimulus package, because this is the backdrop against which we're going to have to pay from those. So I thank the senator from Oregon for his kind words, but I thank him even more for his valiant effort and his leadership on the whole issue of trying to deal with the health care challenge.
Madam President, I would only close this discussion with Senator Bennett by way of saying that I think, having listened to your comments with respect to Social Security and knowing of our work together on health care, if anything, we have seen during this last couple of weeks of discussion about the economic stimulus, how important it's going to be to bring the Senate together in the months ahead in a bipartisan way to tackle these most significant economic questions. You're not going to fix Social Security. You're not going to fix health care on a narrowly partisan approach. You've made that clear with the ideas you've advanced on Social Security. It's a pleasure to team up with you on health care, and I look forward to joining with you in following up on the Social Security proposal you've made this afternoon, and I thank you for your work, Senator Bennett.
Madam President, I again stress how grateful I am to the senator for his leadership and how happy I am to be one of his cadre of loyal followers on this issue.